Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Heart of the World Review Show. I'm your host, Chris Hopkin.
And I'm Julian Gorn, your co-host.
And today, we are talking about Marty Scorsese's American classic, 1972, Taxi Driver, with Robert De Niro, which everyone knows. Julian, do you want to tell us a bit about the film?
Yeah, Taxi Driver is a film released in 1972 where Travis Bickle, a estranged plumber, meets with his woman, played by Jodie Foster. Her name is Betty, and they go to save his brother from a big lizard of a mushroom kingdom.
No,
and his brother is
Julian.
named Robert Bickle.
You really had the Robert Bickle, like a little clue?
Listen,
Julian,
man,
I think you're getting your
important.
movies confused.
No, you know it's my Alzheimer's.
Julian, our viewings just went down because of your Alzheimer's joke.
No.
It's incredibly insensitive.
God damn it.
You should listen to that album to feel better about it.
What?
You know the one. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about the real Taxi Driver.
The real Taxi Driver. Of course. Taxi Driver is about this man named Travis Bickle. He's a Vietnam War vet, very important. And the thing with Travis Bickle is he can't sleep at night. So what he does is he's like, oh, I'm going to become a taxi driver and ride at night. So while I'm not sleeping, I can make some money, And so this lonely, lonely man becomes a taxi driver. And then he sees a woman. And this woman, she
Are you doing a full plot rundown, or are you going to...
We probably should.
Well, do you want to tell... Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to watch this review, you of course can, but we'd really first recommend to watch the film. We're going to be talking about spoilers. This film is pretty classic cinema. I think this was when I saw it, one of my favorite movies. For the first time, of course. We both, well actually, okay, we'll talk about that later. But this is a great film. It's actually for free on Vimeo, which might be beyond legal means, but it is free. So we encourage you to view the...
It's not a piracy site.
No, it's not, but...
That's legal.
Who knows if Martin Scorsese uploaded his movie to Vimeo?
Well, he doesn't control it. It's probably his production company. All right, whatever. Continue.
That looks really fishy. Watch Taxi Driver and come back and hear our crazy critiques. But for now, we're going to keep going. All right, Julian, please tell me what happens in Taxi Driver.
Okay. So Travis Bickle sees this woman played by Jodie Foster. And
Nope.
her name, who is she played
You're thinking
by?
about Betsy. I couldn't tell you, but Jodie Foster is going to be Iris.
Oh, played by... he
Sees a woman named Betsy.
He sees a woman named Betsy. And Betsy works for this politician who's named Palantine. And Palantine, he's a real guy, He's like, we are the people. And,
He's finally brave enough to say it.
Yeah, finally. We needed someone to say it. But anyway, Betsy works for this dude named Palantine, right? And she is dating this little guy, and he's a bit of a nerd. He has, curly hair. He has glasses. He has a nerd voice.
Do you have to mention Albert Brooks' character?
Yeah. But anyway. And Travis Bickle starts to become
Also, wait, did you say she's dating him?
Yeah, they're dating,
No,
officially.
Are you sure?
I'm, pretty damn sure.
I think they're... Okay. You could be right.
Anyway, Travis Bickle, being the dirty dog he is, has a little fascination with Betsy and starts to, watch her and sort of, stalk her. And then one day...
I love that movie.
Good movie. And then one day he goes into the political campaign office and he decides to greet her and very awkwardly convince her to go on a date with him. Ooh. And then on a day, he does a decent job. They like each other, I think. And, they decide to have a second date because, who doesn't love Robert De Niro? He's handsome. He even wore his nicest suit. So...
Of course.
And then he takes her on a second date. Except this time, he messes up real bad, right? Because he takes her...
Boys, listen to this one. Get it in your head.
This one's a zinger. This one's a zinger. Takes her to a pornography theater.
So this will teach you a lesson to be careful.
Never take your partner to a pornography theater for a date. That's a big no. I learned that the hard way by watching Taxi Driver.
Yes.
Anyway. Want to continue?
Okay, I'll take it up. Betsy is not very excited about this, so lesson learned. But the film continues. Travis feels more and more isolated. He tries to get back with Betsy, but it doesn't really work. But eventually, he starts falling into not exactly political extremism, but a extreme leniency toward violence. He's planning to assassinate Senator Palantine, who's running for president. And he meets this young prostitute who he has encountered before and kind of takes her under his wing. She is underage, and he is attempting to kind of break her free. She kind of engages with him for a little bit, and the film ends in this giant bloody conflict. And according to the end of the film, it's possible, depending on how you read it, Travis Bickle has supposedly become a hero. He's well regarded by all for his role in cleaning the scum off the streets. And the film ends when he's in his taxi cab and he reunites with Betsy, who tells him what a good job he did and how wrong she was to have doubted him.
Of course, the ending is fake and dumb.
Yes. I think we both really enjoy this movie. You like it, and I really like it. This is my second time watching it, and
It's my first.
it has been a while since
Baby's first Taxi Driver.
Indubitably, it had been a while since I'd seen this movie. But fantastic picture. Written by Paul Schrader, who will later become a director, but he's one of America's great screenwriters. He did a couple things. First Reformed, I think, is one of his more popular ones. We'll probably talk about him at some point because he's very well-renowned, and First Reformed is a fantastic film.
Great guy.
Yep. But his script is really fantastic. He wrote it when he was in a very dark place. He was about 26. He had previously been a film critic. I believe this is his first
he was?
full-scale. Yeah, he was. This is, I think, he was a political film critic, and I think this is his first screenwriting effort. He was in a very dark place. He had recently been laid off. His wife had divorced him. He was living in a van. And the thing that he noted most of all was the isolation that he was feeling. So he started writing the script in order to be able to channel this isolation and slowly come to the realization of what it was kind of doing to him and how it was affecting him. So he writes the script. It's originally sent to director Brian De Palma, who I think did the film Blow Up. He's I don't know that much about him.
Did action films, right?
I believe so. I don't know. But De Palma really likes the script, doesn't have the time for it. He sends it off to his buddy Martin Scorsese, and that's how we get here. The whole thing is filmed in New York City during the 1972 garbage strikes, making it look a little bit dirty than it normally is, and really encapsulating a different New York than the one we see today. I actually visited New York since we have last come on the show and since we saw the film. Quite a different place, though.
Did it suck as much this time as last time you visited it?
Dude, stop. New Yorkers are going to come and beat me up. No, because I didn't spend as much time in the disgusting cesspool that is Midtown, the modern scum pit of New York. The most.
Sound like Travis Bickle right now.
I sound a lot like Travis Bickle because Midtown is the ugliest place in the world. That's right. It's been factually proven. Midtown is the ugliest place in the world. Where do you want to start here, Julian Gorn? There's a lot to talk about.
Indeed. I think I don't know. I'd like to talk about production first. I think Taxi Driver is a movie that I think you could say relies on like just very good production. I know the camera work, for instance, is all phenomenal. Scorsese very much uses this like very dynamic camera. He kind of like uses a lot of camera angles. You get some interesting shots where like as he's driving, it's just like shots of the toll meter for the taxi just like going
Oh, totally.
up.
And you get those outside shots where everything is sort of blurring together. It's very colorful. It's a very interesting way. We'll talk about
you just
how
see like
he portrays
the
the city.
rain and the like car lights just like blending and meshing together. And then you get these like montages. You see him like in his house, you know, just like shooting his gun away. And you get some like really great close-ups. I don't know, there's this one shot that really stuck in my mind where like the camera pans over like across a hall and then into another hallway that goes into the outside. And for some reason that just stuck in my mind. It's a simple but just like really well done shot. And I feel like that kind of thing really exemplifies how great the camera work is in
Oh,
this
totally. It really feels lively. And it's important because throughout the film, the viewer is very much merged with Travis Bickle. We see things from his perspective. We're really not given much outside insight of other things happening throughout the film. It is really, it's Travis-centric.
Right.
And the way that the editing works, partially as well as the shooting, is that it definitely, you get a part of this madness as you go more into the character.
Definitely.
And as he delves more into this sort of insanity sent on by society.
Also, I think this is further reinforced by Travis Bickle being a very unreliable narrator. By seeing we only see things from his perspective, and he has some like strange, disgusting thoughts. Like I don't know, I feel like he's just portrayed as this like almost masculine power fantasy at a lot of times.
Totally.
And like, you know, he's just shooting guns and then he thinks he's like this badass, you know, like clapping at the politician's rally because he's about to kill him because that was his original plan. And, you know.
Well, he definitely, the difference between how Travis Bickle sees himself and how Scorsese and the viewer is meant to see him is made very clear. For example, you have those scenes of him like training. And Scorsese intentionally exercises the music so that it really feels kind of pathetic. It's really sad and it's lonely, and it's silly. We also see in that ending scene a very kind of gruesome portrayal, even though the way that it kind of flows is kind of like action movie. Because just the extreme violence of it, it was unlike things that a viewer might have seen
like
back then.
he gets shot and then like pulls out another gun.
He shoots somebody's fingers off and they go, ah! But at the same time, the scene is very gritty, it's grimy, it's cruel, and it's not meant to be...
It's just gross.
You're not meant to feel that sort of joy of like, oh, it's violence. It's not a cool action scene. It is a very sad act of desperation and insanity.
Yeah, and building off of that, I would like to mention that the soundtrack to Taxi Driver is phenomenal and is utilized phenomenally.
The amazing jazz score.
Yeah, it's Scorsese utilizes this like jazz soundtrack that just like plays throughout significant portions of the movie. I wouldn't really say if there's any like motifs in the soundtrack, but it...
Well, but there is a sort of central sound to it. It sounds very repetitive. You keep hearing the same kind of saxophone-based kind of noises.
Right.
So the whole thing, the continuity of the film feels like one long day, which is kind of how Travis Bickle experiences things. I think at some point he says the days go on, and he talks about it in the first scene when he's trying to become a taxi driver. The difference between time and days really disintegrates for Travis Bickle. It's just one big thing.
I think that obviously ties into the fact that he has trouble sleeping, you know? Like
Totally. We should say that this camera work especially, it really does a great job of encapsulating the city. I wrote that it really feels like this kind of neon conflict. We see a lot of bright colors all the time, and that's contrasted with what we're really seeing, which is, you know, because of this garbage strike, garbage-filled streets of various kind of societal rejects. What Travis Bickle titles the scum of the streets.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's really an encapsulation of what New York used to be like. And now what we're seeing is this very cold-faced, it's much safer, but it's kind of lonely in a different way. It's very artificial. it's not that true anymore. It's not this old version that was so colored by conflict and just this sort of raw grit.
Right, I'd say. I mean, and I think that like in part ties to gentrification. Like.
Oh, totally. It's a very direct thing. I guess we should talk a bit about Travis Bickle now. We've talked about the city he inhabits.
Yeah, he's a real edgelord. That's what I'll say about him.
He's a real incel type.
He's
incel before incels.
I mean,
I'm gonna title my clickbait my clickhole article that
takes his girlfriend or not his girlfriend.
BuzzFeed.
Yeah, takes his BuzzFeed to a porn theater.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway, Travis Bickle, I think, represents a lot of things. Some of them were meant to be relatable. Some of them meant to be, I think, emphasized with, and some of them which are meant to be parodied, and some which are just like meant to be straight up disgusting.
He was inspired by the real life person Arthur Brenner,
who
shot a right-wing governor. His diary still exists. That was in his diary still exists. So Schrader actually read his diaries and planned the character around that. And that would be part of the reason, or not part of the reason, but that can also be seen in actually the man who attempted to shoot Ronald Reagan was inspired by the film. He was a bit of a Nazi himself. He was a big fan of Mein Kampf.
Wait, he was a Nazi?
Yeah, he was.
Oh.
Really, though, I mean, he was a sort of fascist person. We see this with Travis Bickle, that Travis doesn't really... It is this sort of, fascism in which what is believed as politically correct is defined by one's surroundings instead of an exact political theory. What he knows that he's against is the scum on the streets, is these dirty politicians.
Yeah.
It's not an exact thing of, it's capitalism, or it is the bane of communism. But yeah, and also, interestingly enough, the man who shot Ronald Reagan wanted to get the attention of Jodie Foster, who plays the young prostitute that Travis befriends.
Yeah. And an exact quote from Travis Bickle, which I've written down right here, is, "Sometime a real rain will come and wipe the scum off the street." And when he...
Put that one on your wall. Put that one.
Don't do that.
Put that one with the little cat hanging down and says, "One day a real rain will come and wipe the scum off the streets."
I think his rhetoric is like very clearly like fascistic and like even potentially like genocidal. Because when he is talking about scum, he's not talking about the like quite literally dirty New York like because it was a garbage strike. He's talking about minorities.
The liberal and the kind of free New York.
Yeah.
The more open-faced New York. We were talking earlier about this. The Shining and Taxi Driver is similar in the way that the main characters are characterized by a reaction to opposition toward conservative ideals and their sort of repeal, I think.
Towards progressive ideals.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Toward progressive ideals. The way that Travis Bickle speaks about the way things should be, these sort of cold constraints that have really been violated in his mind by this whole kind of business.
Right. Yeah, and Travis Bickle, I think, not only is he like somewhat fascistic in his like rhetoric and style of speaking, but he's also, I think, not in the way that he's a fascist, but other aspects of him I think are like meant to be relatable. Like he's someone who's very much disillusioned with like American politics. He doesn't like follow politics, and he does eventually like follow Palantine, but only because of this woman who he's interested in. And he just feels alienated and like lonely, and all he does is work, and like he feels like politicians don't vouch for him, which is something that I think many people in the modern day can relate to.
Especially in the post-Vietnam kind of scenario. I think that is kind of even though it's only really mentioned once, it is kind of a key component to his character, and this idea of this culture of violence that he exists in, and this cycle of it, which he takes an active part in, especially in the violent conflict at the end of the film.
Right. Yeah.
But how that becomes ingrained as a response to things outside of one's control. Well, we should wrap up our discussion of the film around. Do you have any last things to say?
Oh no, I thought there was a few interesting little details I want to mention. Like I think, obviously, I think we should touch a bit on the prostitute.
Iris, played by Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
She actually was very young when she played this. A social worker had to be on set.
How old was she?
She was 14.
Oh.
So a social worker had to be on set to make sure. She'd actually acted in Disney products before. This was her first serious role. She really liked doing it, but social worker had to be brought in to make sure they weren't destroying her mind. She was taken off set anytime that Robert De Niro was about to say a curse word.
Oh, really?
That was something that was important. But
Yeah.
I think in this film they describe her as 12 and a half.
Yeah. And in the film, I think you definitely see this like weird sort of character arc with Travis Bickle as he becomes sort of like obsessed with her. At first first when he encounters her and he sees her on the street, she wants him to help her, except he doesn't help her after a pimp gave him $20 to tell him to keep quiet. But then like she very much stays on his mind. In fact, for $20 the pimp gave him, he always keeps it on him. He never spends it. There's clear scenes where he like goes to spend money, and he always protects that $20 very clearly.
This idea that he can do something, he really wants to be operative in
Right.
life in a society that has stripped him of that.
And eventually he does see her again, and when he does see her, he sort of like tracks her down and just like even more starts to fixate on her because, you know, he knows she's in an abusive scenario. She's not at home. She's a child, and his like fantasy is to save her. And I think, I mean, me personally, I feel like this fantasy is rooted more in like this sort of trend of like violence and this like sort of like male power fantasy that Travis has rather than actually caring about her and wanting to save her. Because, I don't know, to me, it just felt like the whole time he was kind of using it as an excuse to try to be like a big guy with the guns and
To
try
be the
like,
hero that
Yeah.
he thinks he
and
is at
I
the end of the
think
film.
part of it was also to like try to pull Betsy. I think he had this weird like delusioned fantasy where like if he saves this girl, then like Betsy will love him, which like
We all see in the final fiction
Yeah.
of the film, which is more probably his delusion that it is reality.
right, you know, he sees everything turns out perfectly all of a sudden.
Fantasy of a dying man.
Yeah.
Well, there's of course always going to be a lot to say about Taxi Driver. It's an incredible film, but I think we're going to have to wrap it up here for our discussing this film specifically. But really, I think we can both agree that its depictions of isolation, the culture of violence, there's a lot to talk about here, but especially its depictions of isolation and this idea of the isolation of the workforce and how the people are so divided from reality and how they react to that.
Yeah. Indubitably.
Paul Schrader called the film a warning more than a
Oh, really?
incentive in response to people like the Ronald Reagan assassin. Before we wrap up, we have a couple honorable mentions. I have a couple. It's been quite a long time. It's been, I think, about a month since our previous recording. So I have a couple things.
God, it has, yeah.
I wanted to mention I've seen two films that I wish I could talk about ad infinitum because they're two of my new favorites. But I saw a film called Why Don't You Play in Hell by Japanese director Sion Sono. It is a
Cinema's
fantastic...
biggest pervert.
Yep, it is a fantastic spectacle piece. It's crazy, it's insane. It's about the love of filmmaking as well as a little bit of a critique of the way that it's going. It's violent, it's crude, it's everything a man could want out of a film. We will most assuredly be talking about Sion Sono at some point, but I can't recommend the film more. My bigger recommendation, and I know that was a glowing review, is My Dinner with Andre. I personally believe this film is life-changing. I think even though it does not sound very fun to watch 2 hours of men talking and eating dinner, it's a really beautiful film. It's very well thought out, and it is one of the most pertinent films in the modern era that one can see. It really changes the way that you look
Right.
at things.
Oh, before we continue, want to do or I guess we can do that after. Final thoughts about Taxi Driver.
Oh, did you have a final thought about Taxi Driver? I
Oh no,
apologize.
just like ratings and final thoughts.
Oh, you wanna do a
that
rating?
right before the end?
Okay, sure, we'll do that. Do you have any honorable mentions? Because I want to do one more thing.
I saw 2 short films recently, which Chris actually turned me on to. Who's the director's name again?
Jan Svenkenmeyer.
Jan Svenkenmeyer. He is was he Belarusian?
Czechoslovakia.
He was a Czechoslovakian film director who directs these wonderful like stop motion short films.
They're really insane.
He made some longer form films too, but everything about them are like so meticulously crafted.
The physicality and the imagery and the care for the craft. He actually went to a puppet school, and you can see a lot of that inspiration in this work.
Right.
Very closely linked to the Czechoslovak New Wave, which is amazing. We will definitely be talking about that at some point. Before we go, I wanted to bring up, and I'm going to have to abridge this because we're running out of time, but last time I talked a bit of game about Joel Haver's Oscar competition. I participated in it, and a bunch of other people have. It is a challenge to make a film within the 3 hours of the Oscars, 30 to 40 minutes. I think it's a great idea, and it's brought some really creative people to the front, so I want to give a shout out to some of my favorites that I saw. I'm going to skip a couple things. I want to give a shout out to Sticky Note Movie by Dorva, which is a film made entirely on sticky notes. They cut out little sticky note people and use it with pencils. Existential. It's just really great. Novel idea, great execution, really cute. Then I want to mention my 2 favorite. Oh, I wanted to mention Things Could Always Be Worse. That was Joel Haver's submission this year. He's done it for 2 years. And that was his submission. It's about him connecting with a friend who has kind of moved away. And it's just a really beautiful film. They're locked in a room.
Oh, yeah.
It's really amazing that you think you could do something like that in 40 minutes and really
It
inspiring.
was all improvised too, right?
Yep. He always improvises a script, which is great. 2 favorite comedies. I'll be short with these ones. Joel Haver had a film in 2021 before he did this whole challenge that he made during the Oscars called A Simple Smash and Bash Job Gone Wrong. Made within the constraints of COVID. It is hilarious. It's a romp. It's creative. It's funny.
It's a real knee slapper.
Exactly. I wanted to give a shout out to one that I don't think I've seen getting much love, called The Fantastical Adventures and Triumphs of Graham and the Gang's Ongoing Efforts by Clinton Givi. We'll try to put some of these either on screen or in the comments. I mean, in the description or whatever. But that was really funny as well. That was a really ambitious project. A lot of it you could see came together in editing. You had a week to edit the film, but it was really funny. So I wanted to give a shout out to my number 1, which is that I've seen so far, which is Woodland by Todd the Band. Todd the Band.
Love Todd the Band. Wonderful guy.
You're just lying. I can tell. Todd the Band has actually made music before. He's probably about college age. This is a really beautiful film he made with 2 of his friends. It's kind of documentary based, and it's reflecting on these phone calls that he was having with this person who was having a really tough life, and this sort of feeling of disillusionment that it gave him. It's a really beautiful and touching film. He covers some of his songs in the film. It's fantastically shot. His performance is, of course, great. And I think a lot of the stuff he says really rings close to home, and I would really recommend it to anyone. I mean, a film that's not that long, for free on YouTube. To think you could get quality like that is really moving. You wanted to do final thoughts before we say goodbye?
I don't know. You wanna give your rating and final thoughts first, or should I?
Well, okay. If we're doing ratings, then I will give this a 9 out of 10. I've said all I can. It is an exquisite film, masterful performance by Robert De Niro, and fantastic writing by Paul Schrader.
I personally gave Taxi Driver like a 7.5 out of 10. I definitely really enjoyed it. I thought that there was this great build-up to the film, which just kind of ended in a climax that I wasn't quite as fond of, and that's probably not due to like any like inherent flaws to the film, but more just like it didn't give me what I personally was looking for. But anyway, I still think it's a great movie, and I'm really glad I saw it.
Totally. Next week, we will be talking, well, not next week, but 2 weeks from now, we will be talking about the exquisite filmmaking of director Akira Kurosawa.
If you like samurais, watch that one.
Yeah, Japan's great master, regarded as one of the best in film history and one of the best to come out of Japan. We'll mostly be watching some of his pictures with actor Tohiro Mifune. If you live in the Somerville area, the Brattle is doing a retrospective upon their partnership. So we'll be going to see some of those. And it may change, but I'll say that some of the probably expected films we'll be watching, I was really excited for High and Low. Maybe we'll be talking about Hidden Fortress.
I really want to see Throne of Blood.
We'll definitely be, oh yeah, we'll talk about Throne of Blood. I think I was interested in Rashomon. Yojimbo, but I think
Sakura.
we're probably going to be.
That'd sleep well.
We're probably going to be watching. Do you think we'll watch The Seven Samurai?
Oh, I definitely am. I haven't seen it yet.
So we'll probably So let's at least cement that we'll be talking about Seven Samurai and Throne of Blood, and we'll probably have a third in there too.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us. This has been a wonderful Odyssey. I've been your host, Christopher Hopkin.
And I've been your other host, Julian Gorn.
All right, silly Billy. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a nice day.
Adios. Do widzenia. Ciao. I don't know.
Bilingual master.